All right, here we go in three, two, one.
What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the Vol Talk podcast. I'm Blake. That is Austin. And man, it's a big week for a lot
Florida
of
week, baby.
reasons. It's Florida week. Y'all, we are coming at you with the Florida game preview, Tennessee Volunteers versus the Florida Gators in Neyland Stadium. We're going to be previewing the game. And man, we'll go ahead and jump right in, Austin. The bottom line, actually, you know what? I don't even want to talk about the game yet. Here's what I want to do.
All right.
I want to lay a foundation for this episode. Um, we've already kind of laid this foundation for the podcast, but the time has come. I hate the Florida Gators.
Now, I'm going to stop you before you continue on this train of thought. Don't talk about the state of Florida right now. They are currently under siege of a hurricane. So, prayers to the state of Florida.
Yes,
Blake's, and I know Blake, so I know where he was going with it. Prayers to the state of Florida. The state of Florida, the people in Florida, we hope y'all are safe. We just don't like the Gators. We don't like the Gators.
praying for your safety in Florida. My fellow Americans, my fellow human beings, and praying for your safety. However, I hate your football team. I hate it. I loathe it to my core. See, so I grew up in the '90s. I was a young lad in the late '90s, right? And that was in the era, man, when we were trading licks with old Steve Spurrier. And Steve Spurrier's he's a little prick. Okay.
Agreed.
And so, Florida is one of our bigger rivals, along with Alabama and whatnot. I guess Kentucky thinks they're our rival. But Florida, no. Florida, the Florida Gators, I'm going to make an analogy. The Florida Gators are like that one ex-girlfriend you have in your past that you truly wish the worst for. Like you just hope that her life does not go well. And I hope that for the Florida Gators, again, the football team, I celebrate their failure. I celebrate their misery. I hope you lock in Billy Napier to a lifetime contract and you are a bad football team for the rest of your existence. The Florida Gators are despised by most fan bases in the SEC, by most fan bases in the country. They're one of the most despised fan bases in the country. They're an absolute dog shit trash program.
Again, the timing's not great on this. However, I agree with most of the football take of it.
It's just football, bro. It's just football. Football and listen, yes, football is football, right? Real life is more important. We hope Floridians are safe. I'm talking about football. And here's the deal. If you are safe and you're a Florida Gator fan, then come on in here and go ahead and throw some hate in the comments, and we'll have a respectful no, it won't be respectful. We'll have a hate-filled back and forth about football so we can keep our minds off of, the difficult situation in the real world, right? As long as you're safe. You know what? Because real world stuff is more important. I'm talking about football. I hate the Florida Gators. I need to establish that in this episode, Austin.
I agree. I also hate the Gators. And you talked about Napier getting a lifetime deal. Well, Heupel has another opportunity to give Napier another year if we lose this game. So let's not lose this game. And
yeah, so let's hop into the game, right? Like this is, I think, it's a great segue, right? Like, unfortunately, Florida looks like they're trending up. We look like we're trending down. Suddenly, it's potentially a scary game. because they always play their best football against us, and we always play our worst football against them. And so, but let's talk about the fact that, I mean, you kind of see this, and I agree, as an absolute must-win game. Period, hands down.
Well, it's definitely must win for this season, and some fans might not like this, but in some people's eyes, it's a must win for Josh Heupel and his future. Now, I don't think that's true. Like, I don't really think that if he loses this game, he's going to get fired. But as far as this season's concerned, if you want to save this season and kind of continue the trajectory that a lot of people expected for this team, which is making the playoffs, this you have to win this game. It's there's no question about that. You lose this game, the season gets off the rails because then you have Alabama next week. You're going to lose to Alabama. If we lose to Florida, we're definitely not going to beat Alabama. And then, of course, Georgia on down the line. And Vanderbilt's playing the best football in their program history right now. So, I mean, if you lose this game, the season's pretty much over. Now, going into the game, we're 15-point favorites right now, 14 to 15-point favorites, which is kind of shocking. Like, to me, I'm like, man, that just doesn't feel like a spread we're going to cover after the way we looked last week. Now, we're back in Neyland. That's a huge factor in this football game is that we're in Neyland Stadium, and Heupel looks different in Neyland compared to outside of Neyland. Obviously, that's the big problem we talked about last week. But as far as this 2024 season is concerned, if you want to be relevant this season, this game is a must-win. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, so we talked in the season preview about, hey, at 10-2, we're likely in the playoffs, right? We're likely in the playoffs. That's going to include some quality wins and some quote unquote quality losses. If you're 10-2, you're very likely in the playoffs. You might even have a shot at getting in the playoffs at 9-3, right? Is what we talked about in the season preview. It's slim, but you got a shot. If you lose to Florida at home, as you just stated, you've still got Alabama on the docket. You've still got Georgia on the docket. You've still got a tough Kentucky team. You've got a tough Vanderbilt team, like you said, which is, scary to think about. The fact that Vanderbilt all of a sudden is, an SEC team instead of just being the doormat of the SEC, right? And so, yeah, like it's very if you are at 4-2 heading into Alabama week, when you've still got all those games on the schedule, it is extremely difficult to envision a scenario where we are in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I would call it a
none.
near. It's a
none.
near impossibility that we get in the playoffs. So absolute must win. In order for this, for this season, like you said, for Josh Heupel's career, I'm gonna have concerns, but I'm
Major
not gonna.
concerns.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna immediately pull out the pitchforks, right? However, it's definitely a must win for this season. So, how do we do that, right? I mean, the offense looked abysmal last week against Arkansas. The defense didn't really look that great, despite the score. And, it was, like we talked about, a lot of Arkansas shooting itself in the foot. And so, how do we right that ship, and how do we stack up against Florida at home this week?
I think kind of like we talked about last episode, this is this is going to be a big insight on the culture of this program and see if
Yes.
that there's actually a solid foundation that's deep rooted in this program or not. Because how they respond to this game is really one of the biggest points this is really the most important. Which every next game is the most important, but this one especially after coming off a road loss where you're 14-point favorites. You were fourth in the nation. You had everything out in front of you, and now it looks bad. They had the worst game, maybe under Heupel last week. So, how do they respond? How are they going to respond? That's really the most important aspect coming to this game. How do the players look? Do they look fired up? Do they look like they want to be there? Has Heupel lost the locker room? No one's saying that, but how they play in this game will determine if that's the case or not. If they do come out looking flat and they do look like they don't care, then we have some serious issues. There's some serious deep-rooted issues, particularly in this team. Maybe not Heupel as a whole, but in this team in particular. But they also have the opportunity, from an optimistic view, to come out there and show us who they're supposed to be and who we thought they were through 4 weeks, which is dominating a team who, on paper, you won't find many, if any, analysts who say that Tennessee is less talented than Florida. We have more talent. We have every reason to come out and win the game on paper. But you have to do it. I mean, that's at the end of the day, you have to actually come out and perform. And we'll see how the quarterback responds as well. Nico had a horrible outing against Arkansas. And frankly, hasn't played great in a few weeks. I mean, he wasn't phenomenal in the Oklahoma game. He had moments, but he wasn't phenomenal throughout the game. So how does Nico respond in his early career? He's 6 games in. He's never really, had to deal with a lot of adversity until last week. So let's see how he comes out and responds as well.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, in our last episode, after in our Arkansas review episode, which dropped this past Monday, I'm looking for that guy or a group of guys or if it's Coach Heupel or whoever that is gonna come in and say, hey, this team is not gonna do that anymore. Is this team embarrassed about losing? Do they feel shame? Do they hate losing? I mean, for like you're talking about with this culture, you've got to love winning and you've got to hate losing. And if you love winning and you want to give your all for Tennessee and you want to succeed as a football team and you hate that feeling of losing, then you come out in this game, you clear out that terrible outing last week, and you come out and you look like a completely different football team, and you look like like you said, who you're supposed to be, who we thought you were, and and it's absolutely critical that they do that because, man, how many years or how many and games in particular under, say, the Butch Jones era, you could tell the culture was not there, right? Because a lot of times he obviously he lost the locker room, several times, and you saw this, despite all the stupid crap, stupid cliches that he was always saying, you saw this situation where they were kind of, I guess, okay with losing. They would lose, and then there would be no fire to there was no hatred of losing, and there was no desire to win and to change. They just kind of just stumbled through the game, the follow-on games after losing critical games, and so yeah, it's all going to come to down to that culture of how you respond, and that's as a team, right, as a whole team, but then also as individual players, like you mentioned, especially with Nico, are you the guy who can move past a bad game and actually perform at the level that we thought you were supposed to be able to perform?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and to be clear, I'm not saying that there is a bad culture. I think what
Right.
the point we're trying to make is that if you lose this game, and particularly how you play in this game, it could bring those questions up. If you come out and look flat after taking that hard loss, because this team is still looked at. I mean, if you just look at the AP poll and if you look at what analysts are saying and you look at the odds, this team is still favored to make the playoffs. It's still a team that people believe in, and you can bounce back. I mean, Arkansas is not a terrible team. It's not like we lost to Vanderbilt, but again, like you really can't afford another loss, and in particular, I mean, looking at the game and getting into the weeds of the game, frankly, everyone has to play better. I mean, particularly the offensive line. The offensive line just looks terrible. I'll kind of talk around Vol Twitter this week and amongst my friends is that why is the tempo offense like dead? Like they don't ever run tempo anymore. And because we went to that Chattanooga game together, dude. We were blown away by how quick the offense was moving, and yes, the competition's completely different. But I think they have to get back to the tempo, man. Especially in this game in particular, where it looks like we'll have an advantage running the football. Florida's ranked like 100th in run defense, and we have been able to run the ball. We were able to run the ball against Arkansas, but for some reason we stopped doing it. But I mean, probably because we were getting 1st and 15s, and that's when I get to my next point. Why is tempo not working? I think 2 reasons. One, penalties. You can't run tempo when you have pre-snap penalties. You can't do it. And it is a chronic issue. I mean, this has been an issue with this offense and this team for 2 years plus. So I'm not going to say it's going to be fixed because there's no reason for me to believe that. And two, the line in particular looks horribly out of shape. I mean, dude, and listen, they're getting paid a lot of money now, so we have free reign to call out particular players. But looking at some of the Lance Hurd plays in that Arkansas game, I mean, he's going to have to be better, or you're going to have to put Dane Davis in because it just looked like a lack of effort and completely out of shape. And, I mean, that's what happens when you take 2 weeks off when, if you're hurt, you're hurt. I get that. But when the coach is coming out and saying that you could have played, but you're not playing – it's weird, man. It's a weird look, and so hopefully he picks it up. If the line gets in better shape and we stop committing pre-snap penalties, hopefully we'll be able to get the tempo up. And when we're running with tempo, it's such a game changer in this offense, dude. It's such a game changer when you can run with tempo, and it's really what I believe gave us success early on in Heupel's career. I mean, if you look at 2021. I mean, we didn't have talent. It's not like we were winning with a bunch of talent on the field. I mean, yeah, we had Hendon and we had good players, but it was that high tempo offense, and they've just gone away from that, dude. And there's reasons, but I believe if we're going to see if we're going to be successful to the level of that 2022 team as far as offensively speaking, then we're going to have to add that element back to our offense. And I'm hoping to see that in the game, dude.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that need to be cleaned up, effort that needs to be increased, play that needs to be cleaned up. What you're saying about Lance Hurd and all this with offensive line, it worries me that it's a symptom of the transfer portal and the NIL era, where really these guys are just like I worry that some of them maybe have a sense of entitlement that they, I have these stars and I'm this, whatever prospect and they're paying me and I don't really have to earn my keep. I'm just going to come in and whatever, I hope that's not the case. But that it worries me in this era of transfer portal and NIL that it's again I'm not going to get off on this tangent. Back in the day, you had guys like the great Al Wilson, who I love, who went out there or even Inky Johnson. You had these guys who went out there and they laid everything out on that field for the love of the Tennessee Volunteers and the love of football. They loved the game, and they wanted to give their all for Tennessee and their team. And that's what it came down to. Yeah, obviously they had hopes of going to the NFL, right? But it was just, anyway, I'm not going to get on that tangent, but again, it goes back to what I want to see, which is guys who are willing to lay it out there, and then actually give their all. And so anyway, but yeah, a lot of things, the penalties, man, it's just, you said, I don't have to reiterate anything you said. I mean, gosh, I'm so sick and tired of this sloppy gameplay. And yeah, the loss of the tempo is interesting. And it's, Heupel in the past has seemed like he's been great at adjustments, right? Especially that's one thing I've appreciated is before under Butch Jones, under Jeremy Pruitt, etc., we were not a second half football team. We would fall apart by the fourth quarter. Part of that was conditioning, but also I think part of it was coaching, right? We came out in the Arkansas game, and all of a sudden it looked like the adjustments were working. It looked like it, but then all of a sudden, come the fourth quarter, it fell apart again. And so, and that brings me to something I wanted to say a minute ago, which is, we're talking about losing the game and what that's going to do this season. In a lot of ways, it's also about how we win, and we kind of talked about this, right? But it's like, or we've talked about this in previous episodes, where it's like, I don't want to just not lose. We need to win. In order for me to feel confident, I need to see a win where it is the result that we expect it to be. Vegas expects it to be at least a two touchdown win, right?
Yeah.
And
I'd
on
like
paper, it should be that way because they're looking at the paper, right?
So I agree with you, but I'm not going to look at the scoreboard. If we win by 10, that's fine. But what I need to see is position groups, individual players playing better. Because kind of like what you're talking about earlier, dude, Florida could come out and play well. And when your opponent's playing well, and because listen, this is an SEC school with a lot of talent on it, so they could play really, really good football, and you can't really control that. All you can control is what you can control. If Graham Mertz comes out there and is just throwing balls like Taylor Green was throwing in that Arkansas game, a lot of time you can't do anything about that. But if I see plays where our tackle is not even touching the edge rusher, like he can't even get a hand on them, and we got our quarterback holding onto the ball for 6 seconds in the clean pocket, like the one or two plays he has a clean pocket and a drive, he just holds onto the ball for 6 seconds. Or if we see guys wide open in the middle of the field, like, I mean, your performance matters. Like that's what you're saying basically. Your performance matters, but I won't look at the scoreboard for the performance. You can perform really poorly and win by 3 touchdowns if the other team sucks. But if we come out there and we look like a different football team from last week, if we look more like the complete team we were in the first 4 weeks, then the scoreboard will take care of itself. And I'm not worried about that as much. But we could win by 2 touchdowns and look like crap. I mean, had we won that Arkansas game, because what you're talking about is the adjustments and how we started to look better. What you're talking about is when we were up 14-3. We had 2 scoring drives in a row. Dude, we could have won that football game, and that podcast that review show would have been negative either way. Now, listen, I would have been way happier because we won the game. I would have been in a better mood. But the way we played in the first half, that is going to come back to bite if you don't fix the things that went wrong in that first half of that football game. The way we looked in that first half, we had no business being in the top 5, let alone the top 10. I mean, we played horribly in that first half. It really should have been probably a 3 touchdown game in that first half. So, again, we can win this game by 10 points. It depends on how we look throughout the game. If we look like we are playing much better than we did last week, then I'll be happy. I don't care if we cover or not. But if we win by 10 and we play like crap and we just won because Florida sucks more, I'm not going to feel good about that going into Alabama week.
Because that means the questions haven't been answered, right?
Correct.
These issues that we're talking about, and it's like at the end of the day, are you going to come out and have a better performance? And so, I hear what you're saying in terms of the scoreboard. I would love to absolutely dogpile, Florida. I would love to win by 4 touchdowns because I hate Florida. Hate the Florida Gators in particular. And so, it's for me, I do hope the scoreboard is reflective of a dominant performance. But you're right, if they come in and score some garbage time touchdowns and whatever, but if you come in and because at the end of the day, like you're saying, in terms of that first half performance against Arkansas, you can't win football games, let alone playoff games, if you're not playing 4 quarters of football. if you're coming in and we saw that you made that excellent point about Alabama against Georgia, where it's like, hey, you only played 2 quarters of football, and then all of a sudden you looked like an absolute genius because the very next week Alabama goes in and craps the bet against Vanderbilt and loses to Vanderbilt. And so and also I meant to say a few minutes back, it took me a second to catch that little jab you got at Alabama, but I really enjoyed it. You said at least we didn't lose to Vanderbilt. That made me chuckle. That was a good one. But yeah, I mean, ultimately you got to play 4 quarters of football, and so that's what I want to see from pretty much. I mean, we talked about it, right? It was pretty much only the running backs in the Arkansas game that.
Yes.
That didn't that looked like they wanted to frickin' be there.
And James
right?
Pierce.
And
James Pierce had a really good game.
James Pierce, yes.
There wasn't a whole lot of position groups that looked good in that game. I mean, like you said, it was pretty much just the backs. So we have to come out and be a completely different football team. I mean, completely different.
Every position group needs to come out, and again, at the end of the day, on paper, you have like you said, this is an SEC football team who's trending up, so it's not like it's going to be a game against Chattanooga, right, where it's that easy. Yeah. But you are better on paper than in every facet than Florida. So come out and frickin' dominate them, man. Because one, you should, because you have more talent, but two, we freaking hate Florida, man. So come out and play like it. Come out and show how much you hate them. Show how much you despise them. And come out and beat their asses. Like that's, that real cutting edge analysis here, right? I mean, but at the end of the day, that's what it boils down to for me. And maybe I'm still in a bad mood from losing to Arkansas, but at the end of the day, I think you and I are both kind of on the edge of our seats. Like, man, like,
oh, I want to see the game. I mean, we have to,
like, what's this season gonna be? Like
that's what it comes down to. It's what's the season gonna be. It's the season's not gonna be over for the players if we lose, but the season will be over for us. That's the reality. I mean, the Florida game to me, Blake went on his little diatribe about Florida. The Florida game to me was our most important rivalry for me growing up. It was our closest games. We played them close every year. One of the first, not one of the first. The first Tennessee game I probably remember watching is the SEC Championship in 2007. But some of the earliest games I remember is the Eric Berry versus Tim Tebow matchups, dude. I mean, it was electric, and I do hope the team understands the importance of the game. It's a very important game, and like you said, in the '90s, it literally decided the SEC pretty much every single season, or who was going to represent the East every single season. It was one of the premier rivalries in college football, so it does matter. This rivalry game does matter, and hopefully the players understand that. And yeah, we're just gonna have to see a different team, and I'm optimistic. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic. I am cautiously optimistic, I guess. I think the fact that it's at home is going to be really, really helpful. And I mean, at the end of the day, dude, listen, we can talk about how Arkansas left points on the board and stuff, but the fact that we had a chance to win that football game and we played our worst football. I mean, it couldn't have been any worse how we played. And we still had a chance to win the game at the end of the game. And we only, and Arkansas is better than Florida, so we should beat Florida. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the quarter, specifically Nico is gonna. I mean, listen. I think it's possible that we just run the football a lot in this game because there is a big discrepancy between Florida's run defense and our running offense. But man, dude, part of me just wants to see Nico just tear it up because his performance was discouraging. It was discouraging, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it was 6 games into his career." Well, I agree. I agree with that to a certain extent. But look at Oklahoma. We just played Oklahoma a couple weeks ago. We got their 5-star quarterback benched. Okay, Jackson Arnold wasn't too much further into his career than Nico, and he got benched. So all I'm saying is that it's not unprecedented for young 5-star quarterbacks to get benched. And I'm not calling for Nico's benching. My point is that it if he's playing really badly, then it's not gonna cut it. Like, we don't have time for him, especially in this day and age in college football. When these 5 stars come in and expect to play, we don't really have time for him to develop, man. We don't have 2 years for him to develop. Like,
well, not when you're paying him $8 million. I mean,
well, I mean,
it's
look at Arch Manning in Texas, man. Arch has already shown, and this might piss some Tennessee fans off, but he's shown a way higher ceiling so far, and he hasn't even played much. And listen, it's just the expectation in college football now. Quarterbacks play young, and they can be good young, people. They've done it many times. Bryce Young was phenomenal as a freshman. Jameis Winston won a Heisman Trophy as a freshman and a national championship. So, listen, he's 6 games into his career, but in college football, dude, you have to develop quickly. We can't wait 2 or 3 games for Nico to develop and get better, and all of a sudden we have 3 losses after the Alabama game.
Right.
The season's over.
Well,
it's done.
Well, and the thing is yeah, we're 6 games into his career, but also he is a redshirt freshman, so he developed last year. He had time last year to learn the offense, right? To get in the weight room, to condition his body, and again, man, like I know I sound like a boomer when I say this, but man, when you're getting paid now, which let's be real, they were getting paid before, right? But now you're getting paid straight up. Everybody knows it. You need to be putting in the work, man. You need to be putting in the work a day in and day out to earn, and like you said,
I don't question any of that. I'm thinking, like, it doesn't matter.
Is he the guy?
Yeah, it does. Well, at the end of the day, he could develop for 4 years and suck, and people have to come to terms with that. DJU for Florida State had all the talent in the world, dude. He got a Dr. Pepper commercial as a sophomore after they won a national championship because people thought he was better than Trevor Lawrence. Turns out he sucks. So we have to come to terms with the fact that if Nico doesn't get better quick, he could just not be good.
Not be the guy. And honestly, it's like, we don't even have to go to another program to know what you're talking about here, because look at Joe Milton. Joe Milton, had all, the arm talent. Joe Milton had the the measurements and all that good stuff. And he developed and he came from Michigan and all this, and just, still he just wasn't good. He just never got there. And so, yeah, like it's tough to figure out, right, when to pull the plug, so to speak, and be like, okay, you're not going to get there. And again, that's what I kind of mentioned and I don't want to turn this into just like a Nico pessimism fest.
No.
But at the end of the day, I mentioned that in our last episode, where it's like I have concerns about if he has that it factor of the confidence and the leadership, and to be able to come out and do that. So I hope he does that, man. Here's what I want to see. I agree with everything you said. What I want to see, I think you're right. I think we're gonna, especially after the performance last week, I think Heupel is gonna come in and look to, just like he did so much last year. He's going to come in and look to lean on the run game, and so that's what I'm expecting. But I agree with you that I hope that we see a lot of action in the air from Nico. And what I want to see from Nico is, man, just make quick decisions. Get rid of the football. Get rid of the football. That's really the only thing I want to see. Even if you throw a pick, if you don't complete all your passes, okay, but at least show me that you don't have a confidence problem where you're just going to sit there and hold on to the ball all season.
I agree. I agree with that, and I think, because you said it's a Nico pessimist, I still believe in Nico. To be clear, I want fans to understand that he makes a lot of good throws, but there's a lot of quarterbacks that can make a lot of good throws. And there's some intangible things about Nico that I clearly overrated, like, initially. And maybe he gets back to those things. But as far as his awareness in the pocket and his ability to know when the pocket's collapsing and when to throw the football, because you're saying get make quick decisions. That's, I mean, that's been a problem for 2 games now. And maybe it's a road issue, okay? Maybe it's a road issue. Maybe we'll see him get back on track against Florida making quick decisions at home. But it's a huge problem. Yeah, the O-line was not good, okay? We all know that. It was not good against Arkansas. A lot of those sacks are on Nico. And that's why he needs, like you said, he has to make quicker decisions. And Heupel also, listen, I'm not watching the all 22 every play. What I do know is Arkansas was playing 2 high safeties and trying to take away the deep ball. Well, then give him some quick stuff underneath and tell him when the check down is open to hit the check down. And things like that. He doesn't have to hit the big play every time. Yeah. And I think he needs to understand that. Sometimes it's okay to take your 5-yard check down because that keeps us ahead of the chains. So kind of like we both said, yeah, we could run the ball this game. We could play great defense and we could win by 3 touchdowns. I'd be happy with that. But the most ideal outcome for me, is that Nico makes me believe again, man. Makes me believe that his ceiling is as high as we think it is, and he can reach that. Because I do think his ceiling's really high. I still think his ceiling's really high, because he's extremely athletic and he has a big arm. But there's a ton of guys that are extremely athletic and have big arms. So
yeah. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I was the guy who was thinking he was going to have his Heisman breakout moment a few weeks ago, and now I look like a fool. Of course, I'm less concerned about looking like a fool and more concerned about the Tennessee Vols winning.
100%.
And so that, yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said. I'd love to see Nico with at least a couple touchdowns, some nice plays, and just slinging the football, man. That's what I want to see. Obviously, we got to see the offensive line shore up those holes. Receivers, I think if Nico will get the ball to him, I think they'll be able to make plays. So I'd like to see that from them. And then the defense, man, someone else on the D-line other than James Pierce is going to have to step up and continue making plays. Tyree West or, Thomas or whoever it is, people are going to have to step up and get some pressure in the backfield. Other than James Pierce, and those linebackers, man, they need to shore up their pass coverage, as well as the rest. Obviously the secondary. I think surprisingly, the secondary. Part of it was Taylor Green just making absolutely phenomenal throws, but still the secondary. Talked about it in the review of the Arkansas game. They were just they were just blown coverage or something. So every position group want to see better play. Love to see us come out and dominate against Florida. Is there anything else that you think is critical to look out for in the game before we get to our score predictions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to talk about the defense a little bit. I think the defense is going to bounce back. I'm actually way less worried about the defensive performance. Now, listen, I think our secondary could, it's definitely very likely that secondary is still not, good. I don't think they're going to be horrible this season, but it's very possible they're average at best. But as far as you're talking about, other guys stepping up on the D-line, I think it's, I'm not worried about those guys at all. I think they're going to be fine. And it's, listen, they showed us really good up until that Arkansas game. And they were still really good against the run for the most part. They gave up a couple big plays, but nothing. Consistently they were stopping the run, especially on short yardage situations. That was what kept us in the football game. So defensively, I feel okay. Now, I will say Florida's passing attack has been really good recently, extremely good. They have 2 quarterbacks that we'll probably see, Graham Mertz and then the freshman DJ Lagway. If they're not playing well, I expect them to go to Lagway, and Lagway looks extremely good. He's made several big-time throws this year, so slightly worried about that. There's a very real possibility that we're going to have to see Nico make some big plays in the pass game, because I expect Florida to make some decent plays in the pass game, man. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we struggle in the secondary. I think our run defense has been good all year, so I expect it to be good still. But wouldn't be shocked if this game turns into a shootout whatsoever with how shaky our secondary looked at times in the Arkansas game. So that's one thing to look out for on defense. But we'll see, man. I hope we win. That's the biggest thing. I hope we win.
Doesn't matter how you do it, honestly, other than, again, as long as the performance is there, whether it's the run game, the pass game, the shootout, whatever, I just want to see better play across the board. So we'll hope that they do that. All right. So I'm a little skittish now heading into these score predictions. I will say I technically was correct against Arkansas. I said I didn't think we'd cover the spread. We, in fact, did not cover the spread.
Correct.
I think I agree with you. I think you said that you are not sure if we're going to cover the spread against Florida. I would agree with that. I think Florida comes out and plays their best football of the year. I think we come out and we are probably. I want us to come out on fire. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to come out on fire. I think it's going to be a slugfest. Whether it's an offensive slugfest or a defensive slugfest, I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be a blowout. I think we're going to win by a single touchdown. I'm going to say it's going to be 28 to 21.
Okay, I like it. God, I want to blow them out so bad, but I don't. I mean, I don't think anyone feels good right now, man. I don't think anyone's confident going into this game. I just hope the fan mindset is a lot different than the team mindset right now, because I hope the team is confident. Dude, I think we're a better football team. If you ask me the score prediction after the Oklahoma game, I think we'd beat their ass. We're back in Neyland. If we just listen, this best case scenario for the season is that this Arkansas game was just an early South Carolina game. Okay, we played great the rest of 2022, especially at home. So I'm gonna say, regretfully, 42-17.
Dude.
Actually, I'm gonna change it. 38-17.
38-17.
I
hope you're right, man.
I'm not confident in that at all.
My only concern about the analogy with South Carolina is that happened late in the season. This happened early in the season, which is a little concerning to me. But yeah, we'll see, man. I sincerely hope your prediction is more accurate than mine. But at the end of the day, I hope we're both right that we frickin' win. That's all. That's all I freaking care about. Just beat the Gators, man. But again, lots of prayers for the folks down in Florida and the rest of the coast. There's still people here in the mountains, in East Tennessee and in Western North Carolina that are, dude. There are people who are stranded. Literally, the road that brings them down off their mountain is gone, and they have to hike down with a backpack to get supplies and things like that. Just a lot of devastation from the hurricanes. There's another hurricane coming to Florida. So again, football is just football, man. At the end of the day, real life is more important. So prayers for those folks who have already been affected by the storms, and prayers for those who are bracing for more impact. So our prayers will be with you. We hope you stay safe. But with that being said, this episode, you're watching this on Thursday, the normal schedule, Mondays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. So please like and subscribe and turn on the notifications so you can see those episodes as soon as they drop on Mondays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. And we'll look forward to the rest of the ride for this season, and we will catch y'all after the Florida game, and we hope to be celebrating a big Tennessee win with you all. That's all we got. See y'all later.
All right, GBO.